If you save badges, stamps, scraps of paper, or postcards, you may be called a collector. In the future, your private collection may become antiques, displayed in museums, or perhaps popular magazines will write about you. But an antique isn't just something old, it's also something rare that becomes valuable. It's possible to find antiques in the most unlikely places, like flea markets or attics. Collectors sometimes attend auctions in the hunt for antiques. The antiquing community, though, are a closed society of people, usually unwilling to share their secrets with strangers. But today, we're going into the world of antiques.
Антиквариат — это очень обобщенное название. Что такое антиквариат? Происхождение этого слова, да, там, антика.
Antique is a generic term. What is an antique? The word antique is derived from antica, which means old thing. An antique can be of artistic, cultural, historical, biographical, or documentary value. The combination of all these features determines the value of things.
Формируют ее цену в сегодняшнем денежном эквиваленте.
Antiquarian, collector, museum worker. They all have one goal: collecting and keeping cultural artifacts. Each of us possesses family heirlooms inherited from our grandparents. But these old things are actually antiquities. These old things are passed down from one generation to another. There are experts of the antique market who can determine the cost of antiques. However, each of us makes the initial estimate of the old things. Every artifact has a value. For example, every person highly appreciates a certain heirloom, but that has no real value. What criteria this thing must meet to be considered an antique?
Семейные фотографии, альбомы с фотографиями, книги.
There are everyday things: family photos, photo albums, books, utensils. How do we determine the value of this tableware? We take into consideration the year of its production, the name of the producing company, whether it was an exclusive manufactured product.
Художественная ценность, да, это предмет широкого употребления или созданная художником на заказ.
Customer commodity and customized work of art are things of artistic value. There are museum artifacts. These are trophies, awards, tableware that have their own story.
По своей природе. То есть это либо награды, да, там, которые там имеют свою историю. Предметы посуды, например.
Bladed weapons can be a piece of jewelry art as well. It can contain information about different eras. Earlier, mankind had no television, press, books, or chronicles. We can understand lifestyle and values of our ancestors by examining the artifacts. Our version of history is based exactly on those artifacts. Artifacts of a civilization are not only antiques, but also reflections of the whole historical period.
Каждая эпоха обладает своими какими-то характерными, стилистическими.
Every era has its own unique style. Even plants and factories have museums of their production.
На фабриках есть музеи продукции.
Both production and plant equipment are these kinds of antique.
Машин, станков — это тоже предметы антиквариата.
You may ask, are there any antiques in Ukraine? As well as citizens of other countries, Ukrainians look for antiques, examine them, and keep them for next generation because it's their history. According to experts, 50-year-old items are considered antiques. 100-year-old things are considered a rarity because these items should be in good condition and contain valuable information. Who has to take care of these? Activists, collectors, or state museums?
В принципе, забота музея, пополнение фонда. Например, все мы знаем.
The main aim of the museum is to increase its fund. For example, the Museum of Maidan has been established. There are helmets, slabs, Molotov cocktails, plywood shields, and a well-known catapult.
То есть это и каски, и фрагменты тротуарной плитки, и бутылки с коктейлями Молотова, и другие какие-то вещи, да, там фанерные щиты.
These exhibits are rather museum artifacts than antiques. They need to be kept in the museum, though.
Но это уже культурно-исторические пока, но они нуждаются в сохранении.
На самом деле, в основе всех без исключения музеев и мировых и
Funds of all world museums, including Ukrainian ones, are based in particular on private collections, initially gathering, keeping, and exhibiting antiques, pictures, icons, and works of applied art were initiated by certain people. There were a lot of Ukrainians not indifferent to history and culture of their country. They had high social and economic statuses and could afford to buy antiques and works of art and form their own private collections. After a while, these collections have formed the basis of state museums. In modern Ukraine, there are not only national museums, but also private ones that have more financial abilities to get new antiques. Studying and keeping artifacts requires effort.
Коллекция живет. Для того, чтобы коллекция была живая, во-первых, она должна пополняться, но самое главное, она должна экспонироваться, стремиться к публичности, к открытости, к описанию.
A real collection is a living thing. New objects should be added to it all the time.
Сказать, что среди успешных людей рано или поздно коллекционированием начинает интересоваться каждый, потому что это как бы.
But first of all, it has to be displayed and shown publicly. I can say that almost every successful person has become interested in collecting sooner or later because this is the next stage of development.
Движущая сила общественного и культурного развития человечества.
When a person achieves certain social status, his or her spirit needs to be increased. This is the driving force of mankind's cultural evolution. In Soviet times, collecting was considered to be bourgeoisie hobby.
Коллекционирование, предметы искусства считались, что это предметы буржуазного образа жизни.
Что ж, в поддержку вышесказанного Анной повторимся, что каждый из нас...
People who keep heirlooms and take good care of them or collect something in childhood are called private collectors. If you got a new stamp that was recently issued and you weren't too lazy to go buy it at a post office, you can be considered a philatelist.
Уже филателист, владеющий коллекцией марок.
Очень важная общественная миссия частных коллекционеров – это сохранение культурного наследия нашей страны.
The main social mission of private collectors is to preserve Ukrainian cultural heritage. They find collection items at international auctions and galleries.
Коллекционеров и собирают, аккумулируют и создают возможность восстанавливать целые исторические периоды. И это то, что позволяет нам сегодня, говоря о национальной самоидентификации, говоря о формировании...
Gathering their collections, they recreate different historical periods. Private collections consist of artifacts telling the history of Ukraine and our predecessors.
В частных, подчеркну, коллекциях фантастические сокровища, главная ценность которых в том, что они позволяют нам знать свою историю, узнавать о своих корнях.
В частной коллекции музея Шереметьево...
The private collections of the Sheremetov's museum consist of historical artifacts that can be hardly found in national museums. The founder of the museum, Alexei Sheremetov, gathered the biggest collection of cultural historical artifacts.
Как попадают предметы в коллекцию? Вот эта пушка, это уникальная совершенно
How is the collection being replenished? For example, this gun is a unique item. It was attached on board of a Chaika Cossack boat, the artillery-type weapon of the 17th century, laid underwater for 300 years. It was found in Zaporizhia at the bottom of the Dnipro River. The main feature of this item is that Cossacks could use cannons while sailing on the river.
Отдельный такой драматический эпизод вот
Some exhibits of the Sheremetyevo Museum tell the history of Crimea. Initially, the museum was dedicated to the Crimean War and was a core one for a long time. In 2010, the Museum of Sevastopol History was established on the premises of the Mikhailovska Battery Museum Complex.
В 2010 году в Михайловской батарее это огромное фортификационное сооружение.
It consisted of artifacts representing the topic of the Crimean War that used to be called the rehearsal to World War I. Armies from many countries of the world participated in the war. Artifacts of the armies, soldiers' uniforms, personal belongings, weapons, and rewards are exhibited in the museum. The unique Mikhailovska Battery Museum Complex attracted visitors from all over the globe. Unfortunately, the artifacts were left on the annexed territory.
Это большая потеря, я вам скажу, не только материальная, потому что ведь очень много, да, говорилось о том, что мы потеряли Крым в силу какой-то такой идеологической...
This is not only a big material loss. Crimea was annexed because of ideological and political insufficiency. They said Ukraine did nothing to provide development for Crimea, and therefore it lost it. But this is not true.
Этот музей, десятки тысяч человек его посетили, и вот та масштабная панорама...
The museum was established by Ukraine and visited by thousands of people. Ukraine did a lot for the development of Crimea, representing its history, including the history of modern times.
Его историю, историю, в том числе и новейшего времени.
One of the top tasks is to study and systemize rare historical and cultural masterpieces found by the collectors. For example, a stamp. Although it's a small item, but a whole science is dedicated to it, as a stamp is a national symbol.
Это один из символов государства как такового.
Эти предметы позволяют раскрывать целые страницы истории Украины.
Thanks to these items, we can open up new chapters in the history of Ukraine. The stamp of the Ukrainian hetman Vyhovsky was recently represented at a conference.
Была представлена печать Выговского, гетмана Украины, и документ «Универсал» этой печатью скрепленный. И вот текст этого универсала говорит о том, что
The document with the seal runs that Ukraine was the initiator of a union established in due course. But if Ukraine had succeeded to realize the idea, it would have been the founder of the European Union. We got to know about it by studying a stamp in the documents with a seal affixed.
В который мы все никак не попадем. Это все от печати, от изучения ее изображения на ней и документов, на которых эти изображения сохранились.
Казаки почти все старшие.
Cossacks had their own family coat of arms and seals. Our collections consist of rings and seals with blazons of every family.
Каждой семьи, которая представлена здесь, что очень важно.
По правде сказать, даже будучи в статусе
Although stamps are qualified as antique items, they're not a golden helmet or a large picture, but their value can appreciate at conferences.
научная поддержка на конференции беспрецедентна. Исторически доказано, частные
In fact, private collectors are in particular representatives of the most active and conscious citizens. They are people who have high social and economic status and can develop the state. Some could ask why prosperous people spend large sums of money on antique trifles.
антикварные безделицы, возмутится обыватель.
И каждый считает, что если человек
Some suppose that if a person buys expensive things, he's rich and spends money on trifles. But what is an expensive thing? This is a Cossack tobacco pipe. Do you think it's expensive or not? And who's ready to spend money to buy it?
И куда ее потом деть?
These are the first original maps where you can see Ukraine and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania of 1630. They were printed in Amsterdam.
Иными словами, средства, вложенные в частную коллекцию...
In other words, when buying an antique item for a collection, you should know what purposes you will use it for. An expert buys it because he knows when the thing will be in demand.
...и заиграет всеми гранями фактажа.
Средства, вложенные в приобретение предмета, это не только то, что за него заплачено.
In some citizens' opinions, if someone bought an expensive thing, it must mean that he stole the money. But that's not true. If it were the truth, there would be very few private collectors. In order to gather a collector should know the business and shouldn't waste time or money. It requires a lot of financial resources, intellectual and spiritual efforts.
Колоссальные организационные, финансовые, интеллектуальные и духовные усилия.
All efforts are put for the establishment of private collections that enrich the natural, cultural heritage. This is what identifies Ukraine and makes Ukrainians a people with a rich history. It's a great responsibility to cherish the memory of past generations and create conditions for future ones.